Hello. I wanted to do a video to go over my map in a little more detail so it can be viewed at your convenience as many times as you want, and you won't have to look far to find it. What I want to go over is what each thing stands for and kind of how they're working and why I think the things that I do. So let's go over what the grid is first. The red dots are power plants. The white dots are weather stations. Yellow dots are where deep earthquakes happen. The blue are where our angels grid are. The green dots are the earth chakras. The green lines are the ley lines, the paths the energies follow. Black dots are volcanoes, and I have little purple dots that are crystal caves, which is new, and we won't go a whole lot into the crystal caves today, but we will another time. So, if you want to take an overall look at the map before we begin to zoom in, then we can try to see what's kind of going on. When I zoom in, I might be able to connect a few things. I know it's quite busy, but when you break it down, it makes a lot of sense. So let's kind of begin. First of all, let's start out with what are power stations. I want everyone to understand how they get the energies and how they produce them and stuff. So, how do they work? Power stations generate power using generators. Generators are rotating machines that convert mechanical power into electrical power. The motion between the magnetic field and the conductor creates an electrical current. Okay? The energy source used to turn the generator does vary. Most power stations like to burn fossil fuels such as coals, oils, and natural gases to generate the electricity. Others do use nuclear power. There is an increasing use of clean, renewable sources like solar power, wind power, wave power, and hydroelectric power. I want to cover this to show how they are in fact harvesting natural energies, and then we buy them back from them. These are free, God-given creations that they take for their own, they call their own, they make us go to our jobs, they make us slave to pay for these things that are free from nature. They should be all of ours, and we need to wake up and understand that we slave for things that we could produce on our own with nature. We could have our heat and our electricity and all of that stuff on our own. So that part of my rant's over. Let's get on to the map. So what I did here is I started out by marking the earth chakra points. I put the grid over it and added the angels. Most of them are marked with blue dots. Some of them just have the blue dot still of my marker. You wouldn't believe how many pens you go through when you're trying to do this. If we do look at the overall big picture, we can see the geometrical shapes that kind of overtake the whole map. We see PowerPoints with triangles, and they form a great big star kind of energy. If you look at the overall map of all the green lines, there is a bit of human error. I mean, my points might not be exact. Of course, we haven't located every single halo exactly where they sit, so I did take and do a little bit of speculation where they lie. I followed the Nazca grid from FPV and it's mathematically correct put on this map. Now, I have heard some people say, well, you can take 2 points and make a line anywhere on the map. Well, that's true. But what I did is I put the chakras on and I started there. I started connecting the chakras. As I did so, I ran across several different angel points at the same time. So they all started to connect. When I started to add the power stations and weather stations, they sat right on different lines and points of connection also. The volcanoes play a part because they are a result of the energy transfer and the pushing up of our land from the underside. I like to call it a creation process. So, when you do take all of that into consideration, you can see how I didn't just draw lines on the map. I took things that were important to our Earth, important power points, and I connected them, and they all started to connect with the angels. I also started to connect other angels to other angels and followed it all the way through, and you can see the grid that kind of worked out because of all of it. Now, a few of the specific things I wanted to talk about, as I mentioned, is the kind of star shape that the green lines seem to take on when you look at the whole picture. These lines actually connect up with the other Nazca lines that FPV just recently revealed. You'll have to check out this map and check out his work at at different times and compare them and see how those new Nazca lines line up very nicely with the couple points on this map where we can see that the land may still connect, or at least the energies do. We can see that. So it's definitely correlating right along with FPV's work. What I thought was really neat was how we did things separately, and our work still correlated and went very nicely together. So we'll go back to the power stations. You see all the red. The great big red blotch is CERN. It's right here between Switzerland and France. And what I found very interesting is the pattern that it makes. And I know that you have to see some of the little bitty red dots. Those are still power stations. I just ran out of red push pins. It's really hard to keep as many push pins as you require when doing a project of this size. But what I thought was really interesting was how it's centered and it has the arms of energy coming off of it. I could imagine it if we were to stretch it out and extend it following the pass, that it almost appears like a Fibonacci sequence in a way. So that tells me that they're generating a lot of energy from there. I don't know their whole function there, and I'm not even going to attempt to speculate at this time. What I do want to show is the amount of energy at stations and power stations that they have centering from the CERN area. So let's move on to weather modification stations. So some of you may not know what a weather station does. They produce a microwave frequency and it aids in the weather modification. They're strategically placed to add to storms that are already moving or produce storms using the elements that are available right there. When they shoot the microwave frequency into the air, it does some kind of charging and causes the storms to form. I'm sure someone else has a lot better information about the specifics. I would suggest Weather Wars 101 if you want to watch some of this in live time. he takes the satellite and he shows how these power stations are releasing the steam into the atmosphere, and it's hitting existing storm cells and generating more power into them, adding more condensation, and feeding the storm along the way. We've seen a lot of these happen in the southern United States in the last couple years. Um, really bad storms come in and they seem to keep growing even on land. Hurricanes are water-based storms for the most part, so it's a little odd that the hurricane is actually traveling onto land and continuing, but they're following the perfect paths of the weather stations when they do this. So let's talk about the volcanoes. The volcanoes that I have marked here are in black. Let me show you a little bit of close-ups. We keep a lot of them over here on the west side. Okay, and we have a bunch over on the east side. And actually, you can check this for yourself. Go to Google Earth, zoom into the oceans on the whole in-between side of those different lines of volcanoes, and all the way from east to west there are underwater volcanoes. Sometimes they actually pop off the west coast of the United States, and we see it form on the radar as little puffs of smoke coming out of the water. They seem to come from nowhere, but what they are is underwater volcanoes erupting, and the smoke is releasing out of the water. So what I have here are active volcanoes marked. They will change slightly, but pretty much we have the same culprits over and over. What they do is the buildup of pressure that comes in from these energy lines, it's a release point. A lot of them that are active will release ash and the lava with them, but even the inactive and ancient volcanoes that we do have littering our entire Earth, they still have earthquakes at those places because they're still a release point for energy. It's a natural release point. So when the volcanoes and the pressure does come into those areas, and because it's a release point, the pressure will always come into the excuse me, those areas. The pressure comes in from underneath of us, which is where this technology sits, and it raises the land up from underneath. So the volcanoes, of course, explode and push out their lava, but in the meantime of doing that, they're creating more land. So it's a creation process is what the volcanoes and earthquakes are. Over in New Zealand, we get earthquakes all the time. The land's always raising. There was the one big one where it actually rose 6 feet from one earthquake. So it's pretty neat when you look into this. We definitely have all these energies working with the different elements. We have them creating our world as we see it. But we also have these power stations and weather stations that are using our natural Earth's energy to enslave us. We have to pay for these things through these companies, through all these places, and we don't have to. We just don't have to. That's the point of my rants when it comes to that, is it's just a control mechanism. As for the flat Earth itself, what I'm finding out is if you take the ball globe and you simply straighten it out, just unwind it, literally straighten it out, it makes a whole different picture. FPV shows that with the way we straightened out the Aurora Borealis. On the globe, it rolls around in a circle up on the top. But when you straighten it out, it actually rolls across the top whole portion of the northern half of our world. So if you just start to take some of the information and data that you already know about and just try to put it on our map, take a picture of it, take a picture of FPVs, and just add your data. Take your points that you've marked and add it to our map and see what it does. So I think that's probably about all I have. Well, one more thing, the earthquake lines. So all of the lines with the arrows, those are the paths that the earthquake pressure travels. So you can clearly see it. I have changed it slightly since I began, but that's due to the different things that I've learned and studying it a lot more intently than I did before. So I also added a bit of speculation from the areas that I don't get data for, only because watching the patterns and doing it for as long as I've been doing it now, I definitely can see where the energy is coming from. So the other thing I do need to touch on is these crystal caves and how it, I think it's, one of the things that they're taking and harvesting to generate power on a mass scale that we pay for, that is a natural God-given creation. But yeah, the crystals, they all have a vibration, a frequency, and energy. Each one has its own specific frequency and energy to it. In the Wiccan world, a witch would go and purchase a crystal, and they would do it for themselves, because it's really good if you can connect with the crystal. So, and I'm sure that the Wiccans aren't the only ones that believe that about the crystal energy, that it almost has its own essence, and you definitely have to be of a vibrational match. So there's a lot of energy in those. Jimbo told us a story about crystals and how you can light a fire on one end of a crystal, and several feet away you can feel the burn come through the crystal and burn your finger. So they're great conductors of energy. So down here in Mexico, off of America, south of America, Mexico has one of the biggest crystal caves in the world. I'm sorry, it is the biggest crystal cave in the world, and it spans 400 miles all the way up to Kentucky and southern Illinois. So think about how good the conductors, the crystals, are of these energies, and where else they're placed, and how the energies are probably flowing through these underground crystal caverns to maybe get from place to place. So some of the places that they are located is Mexico, Bermuda, which is just east of America, Oregon, which is up in the northwest of America, the Bahamas is south of where Bermuda sits, Australia is in our southeast corner down there. We have Scotland, which is right up by the CERN big mess of red. We have California, which is on our west coast of America. Russia, I'm not quite sure where it's at up there, but it is up in the northeast. We also have Kentucky, which is the other end of the Mexican ones. Iceland, which is the little bitty island, continent next to Greenland. And Ohio, back in America, up in the northeast corner of America. So we have a lot of those in America. Maybe I'm just not getting a lot of data on the other ones in the other countries. That could be an algorithm thing as I search. But if you think about it, and we could figure out where all these crystal caves were, I would not be surprised if they add up where these energy lines are flowing. And another thing that I wanted to add is, if you look at a lot of these quake pressures, they seem to go through and almost follow some of these power stations. So it's a question if maybe some of this energy is being created and worsened because of where they're placing these power stations. I'm sure drilling into the earth and fracking all over the place, it can't be good. You know, it's not good. They've changed certain release points from the New Madrid, which is right outside of Missouri, and now Oklahoma gets earthquakes instead because of all the fracking they do. Same with Texas. They're starting to get bigger earthquakes because they're fracking the land. It's just a lot to take in, but I guess I want to kind of point out how we're being duped. We're just constantly being duped. It all relates to flat earth, because if they can get away with this flat earth thing, they can get away with anything. They're lying about everything. So you guys can start doing your, own research and look into these things, and it would be really nice if we could make a change soon. Yeah, but if you guys have any questions, drop me a comment. If you disagree with anything I say, or you think that there's maybe something that would help move my work along, drop me a comment. I'm very open-minded and very open for new ideas or to add to my work, or if I'm incorrect about something, and you can show me some real-world data to show me that I'm incorrect, I'm all ears, very much so. But otherwise, you guys have a real good day.